And thanks for staying with us. It's still a conversation, and we have our second guest here with us, Michael Miracle. Miracle, Ihoma, clinical psychologist, counselor, and relationship coach, whose work centers on emotional wellness, trauma, and family relationships. You're welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Before we come to you, let's finish conversation we're having with Blessing. And we were talking about, the home that has the gentle and soft dad and the mommy that is always slapping and beating you at every excuse.
Yeah, so I was sharing an experience that what happens to mothers sometimes can be that mothers are really tired, and it can affect how they now respond and react to the situations on ground. So there was a particular day that I was tired, and one of my princes had come to me because I wanted sweets, and I said he could have it. But the moment I said he could have it, I didn't know he had gone to meet his dad initially, and his dad had given him. So the moment I said, yes, you can have it, and his dad said, no, he's not having it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, you're not having it. Listen to that. You know what he did? He was little. He just came to Mom. Go and fight for your yes. Mom, go and fight for your yes. You said yes. I'm like, are you for real? I said because I was tired. So most times because mothers can be really tired, and because the way mothers express themselves when they're tired is different from the way men express themselves. Men may not shout. They may not say anything. So that calmness you are seeing in a man, and we are calling is calm, is so much going on in his head compared to women. So women, we express it, we say it, but now why you have to now become self-aware is, what are you saying? Why are you saying it? How about telling your children, I'm tired, I need some rest, I don't want anyone coming around to knock at the door, Mom is tired, Mom had a hectic day, and all that.
Okay, let's come to your Miracle. Now, we've talked about how some of us parenting our children now are parenting the traumatic way because we were traumatized as well from the way our parents brought us up. But she said something very, very, very germane while she was talking earlier. So that's where I want to come in now. You're a counselor. And so for people who are planning to get married, of course, you're planning to get married, you're going to be parents someday. How important is it for, I don't know, is it part of the counseling plan to talk about parenting, or are we really paying attention to that part? Because again, when we are preparing for marriage, we are always preparing for the ceremony, how to be a good wife, how to be a good husband. Nobody is really paying attention to how to be a good mom or dad.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. And it's important that we understand that a man or a woman has generically 3 roles. So you are a man, 2 roles, if I might say. You are a man or you are a woman, which is your identity, and then you are a husband or a wife, which is a role, and then you are now a mother or a father, which is another role. Yeah, and there's a difference between identity and roles. So as a man, that's your identity. As a woman, that's your identity. You didn't choose that. You don't choose your identity. You discover it. But for roles, you choose roles. So if you put out an advert on LTV and say, we're looking for a cameraman, somebody can apply to say, okay, I have the requisite skills to be able to fit into this role. It's the same thing with being a husband or wife, being a father, being a mother. Those are roles. And I've always said not everybody should be fathers, not everybody should be mothers, not everybody should be husbands or wives. Those are roles. Now, if you have decided to choose those roles, then you must understand that there are job descriptions that come with those roles. So the same way you train for any role you're choosing in life. So if you want to be an accountant, you train for it. If you want to be a medical doctor, you train for it. If you want to be a psychologist like I am, you train for it. The same way you also have to train for being a husband or a wife or being a father or a mother. And I know a lot of the times somebody can even be chuckling right now while listening to me and say, what are you talking about? How can what are you talking about?
Grandparents and
exactly.
never went through any training to become parents.
Yes.
And I would say, okay, they did.
Fantastic.
I won't say perfectly
They knew
okay.
what they knew.
They did what they knew.
Because success is what you have done compared to what you could have done. Yeah. Because a lot of times when we say, my father trained me well, my mom trained me well, a lot of times I say, because sometimes even my mom tell me that if not that I dealt with you while you were small, would you have turned out well? I'm like, Mom, are you sure it's the discipline you give to me that made me turn out to be who I am today? Right? So it's important because even training can be formal, it can be informal. And because a lot of us are picking a lot of things on observation. Because if I ask right now, how did, say, your mother or your father or your grandparent learn about parenting? The answer will most likely be their parents. Yeah, so if I ask who taught their parents, it's most likely be their own parents. If I thought who taught their parents, it would be their parents' parents. If I ask who taught their parents' parents, you discover that if we keep going on that memory lane, we will get to maybe the somewhere in the fifth generation, a man and a woman who lived in the Stone Age, who didn't have access to the computer, social media, books, seminars, trainings, all of the things that we have right now. That's the knowledge of the person we are relying on to train people in the 21st century. It won't work, right? Because these are two different generations. People have always asked me, if you compare the past generation, I said there's no need to compare because these are two different generations. For example, the child of this generation is a digital native. He was born into the digital world. That's why it's not alien to see a child who is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 operates a device better than an adult would, because that's their world. It's something we didn't have those times. I can give you an example. Say, when I was growing up, it was very difficult to watch pornography. If you wanted to watch pornography as a teenager while I was growing up, you needed different layers of problem solving to be able to watch porn. First of all, you needed a television. Not everybody has a television, right? Because you needed to be somewhere in the middle class to have a television. Secondly, you needed to have a DVD to watch pornography. So there were people who had television who didn't have DVD. Thirdly, you needed to buy the cassette. And you could be going to buy the cassette. The person who's selling it will say, you are too small. We'll chase you away. Right? Fourthly, even if you successfully buy the cassette somehow, you needed to pray that there is power when you want to play it. Fourthly, even if there was power when you wanted to play it, you needed to pray that the power is not interrupted while you are playing it.
So the cassette is not locked in.
Yeah, because it's locked in there, and if your parents come back, last scene is what is shown. You see? So when you think about all the rigors...
And the seventh one, you needed to own the TV to yourself.
Exactly.
And then you used to be communal living, where everybody sits
together. You need to, in fact, you need to also pray that while you're watching it, nobody comes back home. Whether your sibling or your parents. So those are the difficulties we had growing up. You know. So if someone in my generation said I didn't watch pornography, it won't be because they were
training,
moral or they had character. It will be because they didn't have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
But a child right now, a teenager, if he wants to watch pornography, all he needs is a smartphone. With one click, he has access to about 10,000 pornographic content. That's different from what it used to be. And that's why we must take parenting more seriously now than we took it back then. So there must be some sort of parenting education. You know, the same way we have every other form of education, where the parent is learning, you know, what it takes to parent in this age and time. Very, very critical. Because like I said, if it's a role you've chosen, you must train for it.
Okay, for parents who don't beat, use the stick or use the cane, what about parents that shout all the time, just shouting? What effects would that also have on children? Miracle.
Okay.
That's for you.
All right. I would say that shouting, because shouting has maybe not exactly the same effect as beating, but it has similar effects. Because when you shout on a child, right, many times you damage especially when you do it consistently, you damage the self-esteem of that child. You make the child question himself, right? Because we're not created to be shouted on.
These children most times want to test your limits.
Yes, I understand that sometimes it's almost impossible not to shout.
Not to shout, yeah.
Especially if you were trained by shouting parents. Yes, because there's something called generational trauma. Yeah, and trauma usually runs in families. That's what a lot of people call generational causes. It's usually generational trauma, generational patterns, right? What people picked from their parents and then transfer it to the next generation. And then if nothing is done, they will take it to the next generation. So if you are raised by shouting parents, that's why there's a rule of thumb even when it comes to beating, to say that if you were a product of beating, especially corporal punishment, don't use any form of caning as a way to discipline or train your child, because you will most likely overdo it. Yes, because that's how it works. So shouting also has similar effects, like I said. It could damage the esteem of a child. It's because there is physical abuse, but there's also emotional abuse. And if you constantly shout on your child, you shut something down in them. That's why a lot of Africans lack ingenuity, are not innovative, and also lack in courage.
Okay, let me pick it up from there. So I want to understand is there something about parenting culture? Because again, we are in Africa, and you find so many families that have migrated or jackpot, and they are having problems parenting their children because the way it is done in the Western world is different from here. So is it important for us to understand the culture of where we are at the moment while parenting our children?
Yeah, very well. We have to, when you get to anywhere you find yourself, I think you should first understand the culture of that place. You want to know how are things done here. Because I remember when I was preparing to be a parent, I was reading on it. And I realized what I was reading on were not things that I grew up to know. I wasn't familiar with it because who were the ones writing the books then? It was whites, white people that wrote the books. And I was reading through and I saw that, oh, these things are good, but we don't do them here. So I see that when it comes to parenting, you have to understand that you need to unlearn and relearn. So when you are unlearning shouting, for example, you were talking about shouting now. People have embraced shouting as our culture. The moment you embrace something that this is how I am, you can't change. It's in the mind. Because everything we saw growing up got into our subconscious. So they just come playing out because really nobody taught you, oh, this is what you should do to a child when a child does this. But when a child has done something, the moment you bring a cane and you're beaten, is your subconscious reminding you that maybe that was what they were doing that time that made people, bring out the cane. And that was what worked. So that's why people now do those things. Now there's African culture, which, you were saying something the other time. Miracle was talking about tradition, the past. But we still see that there are traditional values that are worth preserving. They are beautiful things, honoring the elders, respect, accountability.
Egba is not part of it, though.
So, you see, when we talk about spanking, I think I should talk about spanking. Spanking makes the parent feel better, that you're not helpless, that you are able to do something. That's how I see spanking. And shouting also. It makes you feel better. But you need to ask that what results are you actually looking for? What is the result? So yes, when you get to a particular place, and
Thank you very much, Blessing Oladimeji, parenting consultant, Miracle Ihoma, counselor and relationships coach. We've been talking about contemporary. You will come back. We'll talk about this. Okay, we'll go on a short break. When we come back, the conversation continues.